FREENBECKY, Redefining Marriage Without Needing Permission. Introduction. When marriage stops being a ceremony and becomes a feeling. For generations, marriage has been defined by permission. Permission from families. Permission from society. Permission from laws, religions, and traditions. It has been marked by paperwork, ceremonies, witnesses, and public declarations. But long before marriage became an institution, it was an idea. An agreement between two people to choose each other consistently, to move through life side by side, and to build safety in a world that is rarely gentle. In the modern era, especially within LGBTQ+ communities, marriage has often been less about legality and more about recognition. The right to love without explanation, to commit without apology, and to exist without fear. This is where FREENBECKY enters the conversation. Not as a confirmed married couple, not as a public declaration, but as something far more unsettling to rigid definitions. A connection that feels married without ever asking permission to be called so. And that is precisely why they matter. The traditional idea of marriage. And who it leaves out. To understand why FREENBECKY resonates so deeply, especially when framed around marriage, we must first understand what marriage has historically represented, and who it has excluded. Marriage has long been a public contract, a social expectation, a cultural performance, a marker of legitimacy. For heterosexual couples, marriage has often been assumed. For LGBTQ+ couples, it has had to be fought for, justified, defended, and sometimes hidden. In many parts of the world, marriage is still inaccessible to queer people. In others, it exists legally but remains socially contested. Even where it is allowed, LGBTQ+ couples often face scrutiny that heterosexual couples never experience. So when queer audiences talk about marriage, they are not always talking about paperwork. They are talking about safety, permanence, a mutual choice, emotional home, a being seen without needing to explain. This is why FREENBECKY's connection, undefined, unconfirmed but deeply consistent, feels revolutionary. Because it bypasses the gatekeepers entirely. FREENBECKY and the radical idea of chosen commitment. What does it mean to be married in spirit? It means choosing each other in ordinary moments, not just grand ones. Means showing up when no one is watching. Means alignment, not announcement. Freen and Becky never presented themselves as a spectacle of romance. There were no staged declarations, no dramatic reveals, no marketing built around intimacy. And yet, what fans observed over time was something unmistakable. Consistency. They stood together across years, projects, and pressures. They protected each other's emotional space. They adjusted to each other instinctively. They remained anchored when everything around them shifted. Marriage, at its healthiest, is not about excitement. It is about reliability. And reliability was the language FREENBECKY spoke fluently. Why, without needing permission, matters so much. Permission implies authority. It implies that someone else gets to decide whether your bond is valid, respectable, or real. For LGBTQ+ people, permission has historically been required for everything. To love openly, to hold hands safely, to build families. To be acknowledged as serious. FREENBECKY's power lies in the fact that they never asked. They did not ask fans to validate them. They did not ask media to frame them. They did not ask institutions to define them. They existed in a way that said, "This is ours." And that is enough. That quiet refusal to seek approval is deeply political, even if it was never intended to be. Marriage as behavior, not status. What fans recognized in FREENBECKY was not a ring, a ceremony, or a statement. It was behavior. Marriage behavior looks like emotional attunement, a shared responsibility, a mutual protection, long-term thinking, trust built over time. Freen consistently created space for Becky. Becky consistently softened Freen. They did not consume each other. They did not compete. They did not perform intensity. They regulated each other. That is the part people rarely talk about, but it is the core of lasting partnership. Why this hits LGBTQ+ fans differently? For many LGBTQ+ fans, especially those in restrictive environments, marriage is not a realistic option, at least not yet. What is accessible, however, is emotional commitment, chosen family, quiet devotion, long-term loyalty. Seeing FREENBECKY model a bond that looked stable, respectful, and enduring, without needing to declare itself, felt like a lifeline. It said, "You don't need permission to choose someone deeply. You don't need validation to build a life around care." That message lands hard for people who have spent their lives being told their love is temporary, experimental, or unserious. The internet's discomfort with unlabeled commitment. Why did people keep asking if they were married? Because modern culture is uncomfortable with ambiguity. Ambiguity removes control. It removes the ability to categorize, consume, and move on. But FREENBECKY did not resolve into a label. And instead of weakening their story, that ambiguity strengthened it. Because what people couldn't categorize, they felt. And feelings are harder to dismiss than facts. When love looks married without saying, "I do," there is a reason fans used phrases like, "a married energy," "old soul couple," "already family," "a domestic without trying." These weren't fantasies. They were observations. Marriage energy is calm. It is not frantic. It does not beg for attention. And that calmness radiated from FREENBECKY. Redefining marriage for a new generation. FREENBECKY unintentionally offered a redefinition. Marriage is not ownership, public proof, societal approval. Marriage is continuity, emotional responsibility, shared reality. This reframing especially resonated with younger LGBTQ+ audiences who are questioning traditional institutions while still craving deep connection. They weren't rejecting marriage. They were redefining it. Why this story lasts. Trends fade. Pairings dissolve. Tension moves on. But FREENBECKY lingered. Because what they represented was not gossip. It was possibility. The possibility that love can be a private without being hidden, committed without being announced, deep without being dramatic. That is rare. And rarity creates legacy. Conclusion. A marriage of intention, not permission. FREENBECKY may never confirm anything. And that may be the point. Because what they showed the world was this. Marriage is not something you ask permission for. It is something you live into, quietly, consistently, courageously. And for millions of people watching, especially LGBTQ+ fans, that was more than enough.